Hello. So, in today's talk, we are exploring stress. So, stress is a universal human experience. We all experience it. But it's key that we know that it is also a driver of chronic disease, mental health issues, and diminished quality of life. So, the stress response, often referred to as your fight or flight, evolved to protect us from immediate danger. However, in the modern world, chronic stress has become, unfortunately, a pervasive health challenge. It follows many of us day to day. So, what is stress? So, stress is your body's physiological and psychological response to a perceived challenge or threat. So, the stress response, as I say, it was there to help us fight or flight from something that was endangering us. So if we break it down a little bit to understand why it happens and when it can be good and perhaps when we can behave differently around about stress triggers. So the physiological, our body's adaptive response, is from the hypothalamic, pituitary and adrenal axis. So the hypothalamus, which I always think of as our thermostat, it signals to the pituitary gland to release adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH. ACTH stimulates the adrenal glands to release cortisol, which is their primary stress hormone. In the sympathetic nervous system, our adrenaline and noradrenaline are released as a triggering to stress. And this in itself increases our heart rate and our blood pressure, and it redirects blood to muscles and vital organs. So it enhances our oxygen intake through bronchial dilation as well, so when you're stressed. So this is a very rapid response, and this can be the trigger that people will get for panic. So this rapid response allowed our ancestors to survive life-threatening encounters. However, we're finding now that modern stressors such as work, overwhelming stimulation from emails and text messages and phone calls are triggering the same physiological pathway, but without the rescue, without the resolution. So then the impact that this has is that this chronic stress pathway becomes constant, and your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis and nervous system has harmful ongoing effects. So when we have this dysregulated cortisol, what we find is cortisol will pump and increase your insulin, which in itself will give you more increased risk of insulin resistance as it pumps frequently. And this insulin resistance increases the risk of type 2 diabetes. We also know that this pumping of cortisol suppresses our immune function. And the chronic high blood pressure and increased risk of peaks in our blood pressure give us a greater cardiovascular strain. So end organ damage from hypertension and things like increased risk of heart disease, stroke. Cortisol also damages the hippocampus, and it can impair memory and increase anxiety and depression risk. You know yourself that when you're overwhelmed and stressed, cognitively you're just not functioning well. Frustratingly, this cortisol and high increased stress also promotes visceral fat storage, and it's linked to metabolic syndrome, which is again a risk factor for diabetes. But that's where we find that we have increased cholesterol, increased blood pressure, increased girth around the middle, and insulin resistance. Chronic stress is also linked to inflammation. We think increasingly that inflammation is the root of many of our chronic diseases, such as arthritis, inflammatory arthritis, Alzheimer's, and malignancies. So we need to understand that it's not just about feeling better day to day with our stress, But actually, for our longevity, we need to tackle stress. So how do we do that? And I'm sure many of us have looked at trying to reduce their stress in ways such as meditation. And that is really important, and we're going to come to that. But simpler approaches of things like regular exercise. We know that increased exercise will reduce our cortisol levels, and that in itself will reduce our stress, but also enhance our resilience to stress. So there was a research paper in 2007 by Rimmel et al. And what Rimmel and colleagues had suggested was that reducing our cortisol levels through exercise actually improved our ability to deal with stress when it happened. So whilst it also reduces stress, it's the effect that when we do get our stress, we can be more resilient. Activities like yoga improve heart rate variability, which in itself is a marker for stress. So exercising and doing exercise in a relaxing environment, such as getting out into the green spaces, is worthwhile doing, but really important. Having that mind-body activities like yoga, tai chi, increase their relaxation, bang for buck as well. So remember, 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercises per week, brisk walking, running, cycling, on top of our additional strength work with things like Pilates and resistance work and weights. Nutrition. How can what we eat impact our stress level? Well, we've got a really, really strict and close brain-gut axis. We have half as many brain cells in our gut as we do in our brain. We've got more serotonin receptors in our gut than we do in our brain. And evidence is evolving now to tell us that high sugar processed foods actually exacerbate and make the stress response worse. Van der Zee in 2021 and colleagues also looked at this and were able to show that diets high in processed foods had a greater stress response. There's an element of, I think, chicken and egg with that. When you're stressed, you don't eat so well. When you're busy, you eat convenience food. So trying to be mindful about that, trying to be mindful about what you put in your body and how that's going to make you feel later. We've also got results from Grosso and colleagues in 2014 who researched the impacts of Mediterranean diet. We know that the Mediterranean diet reduces inflammation and improves mood. So putting good, fresh, whole food into your diet has a lasting impact on your stress as well. So an action point from today is prioritise whole food, nutrient-dense food, leafy greens, berries, and omega-3 rich food like fish. Limit your caffeine and alcohol, which it heightens your stress. We've covered a little bit of hygiene in earlier modules, but it's so important again. Poor sleep heightens your cortisol levels. So poor sleep increases your perception of stress. And poor sleep has that knock-on effect with weight, stress, and how you feel in your mood. So we're aiming for that good quality 7 to 9 hours sleep per night. Create a consistent sleep routine. Don't waver from the path and get off your screen time before bed. Mindfulness and relaxation techniques are important, and we're going to be looking at that, and I'll give you some resources at the end on our readable PDF. But mindfulness-based stress reductions improve our regulation of stress. Kabat-Zinn, the mindfulness sort of master in 1990, and Goyal and colleagues in 2014, researched and proven that mindfulness-based stress reduction improves our stress regulation, involving things like deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation for lowering our blood pressure and reducing anxiety and helping us getting off to sleep. So I want you from today to really practice that daily mindfulness using something like the Headspace or the Calm app. Are brilliant ways to just bring in 5, 10, 20 minutes of mindfulness meditation to your day. So once you finish this module, once you finish listening to this today, I want you to do just 5 to 10 minutes of real mindfulness. Being present in the moment, looking at the surroundings, looking out your window, breathing in and taking just a couple of moments to appreciate the very moment you're in. Other important things for stress reduction is that social connection. There is strong evidence that social connections reduce your stress and it increases your resilience to stressful situations. So things like being around friends and family, people who fill your cup, not people who stress you out, but people who fill your cup. Engaging in group activities, group exercises, also things like volunteering. Whilst it can feel like an added chore, the bang for buck, the thing you get back, that feel-good factor from volunteering, engaging in group activities, and being around people who fill your cup has lasting stress reduction qualities. So look, stress is inevitable. It's part of life. But managing it and its impact on us is really important. I want you to address stress through different lens now. I want you to acknowledge when it happens. And then I want you to be mindful of what physical activities you've done recently. Has that had an impact? How did you sleep the night before? Can you stop and do some mindfulness for 5 minutes? When did you take some downtime to be around people who fill your cup? So stress evolved to protect us, but in today's world, it's harming us. So I want you to understand its roots and its effects, but also that evidence-based strategies, the nutrition, the exercise, the mindfulness. I want you to be living in control of your stress. What small changes are you going to make today to reduce your stress levels? Take time to think about it and reflect on that now.